Okay, we're going to move the Wednesday, August 19th, 2020 Board of Education meeting to regular session. Everyone please silence your electronic devices and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Additions and deletions to the agenda since Friday mailing.
Yes, we do. We'll be adding 6.9, which will be the approval of the 2020-21 reopening plan. We will be adding 6.10, which is giving the superintendent authority to take actions necessary and for the purpose of reopening the schools via, the federal, state, or county laws, regulations, executive orders, or guidance. Not sure what that is. 6.11 is going to be the after-school program at Peter B. contract. 6.12 is our tax warrant. 7.6 will be the correction to Emmett Emmett, for his science teacher position. And 7.7 will be the retirement of Connie Mortifolo.
Okay. Yeah, so do we have to do anything to change? 7.6 is going to be 8.1?
We'll just move it down, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, do I have a motion? Mr. Ross, Mr. McFerrin, any discussion? All in favor? All right. I need a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the August 5th, 2020 BOE meeting. Mrs. Hoteling, second. Mrs. Klein, any discussion? All in favor? Pass. We have no awards, honors, recognitions, or presentations, no hearings and petitions. I need a motion for one or all of the business considerations.
Make a motion for all 6.1 through 6.12.
Okay. We have a second, Mr. McFerrin. Where's our 6.12? Do we want to have a discussion now about the tax rate, or okay?
You're approving the tax rate. I would like the board to know, the public to know that anytime we're in a year where the tax levy doesn't change, which we did not increase the tax levy, nor did the library. And in August, we found out that the assessments went up. The assessments went up. So that means that the tax rate is going down in this current tax season in September. On average, across all towns, it's going to decrease by 6.5%. By town, for Bethlehem, it'll go down 5.55. Coeymans, Ravena will go down by 10.27, and there's a reason for that. I'll talk about that in a minute. 4.53 in New Scotland and 5.55 in New Baltimore. The larger decrease for Ravena and Coeymans is because they reassessed their properties this past year, so now they're at 100% equalization rate, so they have a little bit more of a reduction. Now that has also resulted in many homeowners and businesses challenging their assessments, and that could happen if the courts or the assessors agree with that. We'll get that notification. The board will be made aware of that as the tax season goes, but we are poised to start printing our bills and having our tax bills out on September 1st, so it's nice. But again, an overall average reduction on the tax rate of 6.5%.
I think that's really big to point out, especially with everything we've been going through. I don't think it was planned this way, that we were expecting a decrease like that, but it's definitely welcoming news for, I think, everyone. So it's good to hear. Anybody else? All in favor? All right, motion's passed. Need a motion for one or all of the personnel considerations.
Motion for all.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. McFerrin, any discussion? The one thing, I think we might have done this already, but we'll read the retirement. The Board of Ed approves the retirement of Connie Mortifolo, teaching assistant. which will be August 31st, 2020. So we thank you for her time.
There are also a couple other ones there.
7-4?
7-4, 7-5.
Oh, wrong page. Yep. 7-4 and 7-5. The Board of Ed approves with regret the retirement of Christine Tempe and Lynn Tiberia. Okay, so we thank them as well. 8.1 informational items.
We gotta vote. We
What?
have to vote.
A vote, motion
We did vote.
for 7.
Yeah. Okay, yep, I need a vote.
All in favor?
I thought we, all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Just got the all in favor.
I got the motions to discussion. 8.1 is informational items, special reports. I have nothing. Any BOE members have anything they would like to discuss? So we will turn it over to Dr. Bailey.
Some of the board members have been attending the public live streams we've been holding surrounding the reopening committee's work, and as we plan for the beginning of the school year under some pretty interesting circumstances, and we're very appreciative for that. We had our first meeting last Wednesday for an hour and a half at 7 o'clock, and then we had another one last night, and our last two will be tomorrow. We have one at 5 o'clock for our special education families, and then one again at 7, which will be a wrap-up for some of the discussion that we've been having. You know that we had a survey out last week to families asking them about, well, first it showed them the contents of the reopening plan draft framework. And after they clicked through that, they could answer some demographic questions about whether they're interested in remote instruction for their child, whether or not they have internet at home, and whether or not they'd be transporting their own child. Response was phenomenal. This shows 984 total responses as far as the grade level on the right-hand side there. But we also had another 50 or so in print. So out of our 1,130 or so families, we had almost 1,030 people participate. Fantastic. We're very grateful for people taking the opportunity to do that. The chart on the left shows the grade levels of the students that people were reporting on. The pie for the high school is inordinately large because when people were reporting out on their children, the first one they were supposed to report out on is their oldest child. So we have a larger pie there, but the representation from each of the buildings as you look at the grade levels is really pretty good over on the right-hand side there. And based on that information, it helped us to make some important changes to our proposed planning. The New York State Council of Athletics and Physical Education and Dance changed their decision, along with state ed, about whether or not someone on remote instruction could participate in athletics. The answer is yes, they can, as of last week. That may change at any time. But as of right now, they believe them to be students in attendance. They just happen to be in remote attendance. Before we had said that every child needed to be picked up and dropped off at the same stop. After some, listening to people's concerns and some navigation, we determined we can do 2 separate routes. We can pick up in one location and drop off in a different location in the afternoon, especially important for childcare. The one caveat would be we want it to be the same place every morning and the same place every afternoon. We talked about maximum capacities on buses. We have a maximum capacity of 22 on one of our large buses. That means that it can't fluctuate dramatically and have additional students because there will not be 23 students on a bus. So, and also, as you would imagine, very confusing for a driver if they have to drive 5 different routes in the morning and 5 different routes every afternoon. So we want to have some continuity there, but at least it's some improvement for our families who have childcare needs. People who choose to opt their children into fully remote instruction beginning in September, we've extended the date so they can choose on as late as October 15th or December 15th to have their child come back to school. And as we discussed before, the reason why we need at least 5 or 6 weeks notice is if at this point, we're estimating 20% of children will be remote instruction 100%. In our sum total of our student population, that's about 330 students or so. If half of them choose to come back in the second semester or the second trimester, we may have to reallocate staff, create new sections, and establish new classrooms. We need a little bit of time to do that, so we want at least some notice if people are opting to come back into instruction.
I have one quick question about that. I just want to make it clear that, with these guidelines, that a high school student will have to decide by this Friday whether they will return to school by February or not.
Yeah,
Now, how come other districts are doing 1 quarter and not 1 semester, which is half a year? Why can't we have that turnaround?
well, I think a lot of it depends on what we believe the resource availability is. For us to be able to deliver the in-person instruction that we've promised families, which is every day for our students in K through 6, and on a rotating schedule in the secondary, we will be allocating virtually all of our staff. We will be using virtually every available space to do that. In pre-planning, and that does mean we'll be sacrificing some things that may have ordinarily been in place. Some remediation services that would have been provided one way may have to be provided another. We have the frequency of access to some of the specials are going to be different because of the limitations of the number of staff that we have to serve 30 sections that would ordinarily be at Peter B, which are now 38 sections. We do not have additional staff to be able to meet that capacity. So
My follow-up question is, especially again, towards the middle school and high school model, the hybrid model, you've developed that model without knowing if anybody is going to be remote, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So we have to have physical space for every single kid, right? So now we're going to have these kids that opt out, whatever, let's say it's 20%. I don't understand why it's so hard to get them back in if we're starting with a plan that already says, hey, they're going to be here. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it is a major decision in my household to keep a high school student out until February.
right.
You know what I mean? That is very stressful. And I'm sure other people are thinking about that. I just want to make sure everybody knows. It says December 15th, but it really means February, whatever the third quarter is.
In our initial discussions, we did actually have it set for the first quarter. In other words, that would be late October, early November for the high school, and then, the first trimester is still a trimester at the elementary. That's around December, or late November, actually, November 25th or something. So an elementary parent will be deciding until November 5th, and a secondary parent will be deciding until February, you're right. And what we decided was we would open school, and within the first 3 weeks, parents would have to make the decision to have their child come back. And we didn't know that we would be good enough at what we were trying to do to be able to readjust and take all those students who they've started to develop a cohort group, working together, working with a specific staff member, to disrupt them by the 10th week seemed mean. But I understand the other side of the argument too, because 5 months completely remote instruction is a huge choice that a family would be making.
How exactly is that a trimester?
I don't understand.
At the high school, it's 1 semester, so it's half the year, 5 months. At the elementary school, they're broken up by about 3.5 months, so it'd be late November for an elementary school. And at a secondary level, usually the semester is a natural breaking point. But, it's not a discussion really that we've had, Pete, with families. Through the chat, it hasn't been something that has been high on their discussion. But it's something we can bring back to the committee and have a discussion about. As we said, the biggest reason why we want people to commit to remote instruction with a signature is the magnitude of the decision. But we also know that, let's say the governor makes a change, or we have a drastic change next week, it may significantly influence people's choice in that. So we're not going to be unreasonably inflexible as we make these decisions, but we just wanted to make sure if someone was committing to it, they understood the commitment that would have to be there.
Are they the marking period, or are they the semester? Fifth grade at this point will utilize more of an elementary, so they're looking at the trimester.
Yes.
Sixth grade is following more of a middle school, so they would be in the middle school.
Just so
high
that
school.
parents who have multi-age children understand that it may not be a across-the-board decision.
Right.
You're gonna have impacts differently based on the grade of your child.
I'm 99% sure in the questionnaire itself, we've tried to stop using, and I apologize for using them, we've tried to stop using elementary and middle school as the two vernaculars. We've said K-6 for time in school and 7-12 for time in school. And then when we're talking about trimesters, elementary kids who would traditionally be in elementary, K-5, are the kids for trimesters. I think that's what the document says. I hope that's what the document says, because you're right, that is a very definitive point.
Do we have these updates on the website already?
Yes. This slide presentation is on the website, and when we made changes in the framework, we made them in red, so if someone was going back to look at the document, they could see that was changed in red.
There's a large, like, effective date as of, like here where you say as of?
Yes,
So that people can see what they're comparing their notes to.
Yeah, the document on the top, it has a date. It says 8/18, which was yesterday, and then it says these changes occurred between August 7th and now. The other thing that we did is tonight we sent this out in an email to folks on Blackboard, pointing to the documents so that they would know where to find the specific, where to find the changes, the documents that have been changed.
So Brian,
Yeah.
if you are opting to send your child to school, is there an are you committing to a full semester for that also?
You pull them out anytime.
Well, we know that, it's kind of like the discussion about the masks. If we're always deferring toward the Department of Health guidelines that protect people, and if people have a need to feel protected or safe or whatever, we are allowing families at any time to decide to go from in-person instruction to remote. They would just call their principal and say, I'm interested in doing this. It's harder to go the other way for the programmatic reasons we talked about, but we'll allow anyone to leave in person and move to remote. If they, find it to be stressful, or they find the content in whatever the context is, like sitting in a seat for, a 5-hour day, they can opt at any time.
I think it's going to be numbers going both ways, or asking to go both ways. I didn't know if we're in some of the, decision making, if we are looking at, obviously space and having teachers and having a spot for someone goes into allowing or making that decision that someone says, I said I wanted virtual, but it's not working for me. I'm struggling, right? And or a family, and maybe in person is what they want to do. And if there is spots, would there be, I don't want to use the word accommodation, but would we entertain that? Because we could have it moving both ways. You could have people opting to go virtual. You could have people asking to come back.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if there's an easy answer for that.
Well, one good thing is, we're going back into the live stream tomorrow. We can engage people in the conversation about this full semester and trimester issue,
Okay.
and how the effect that this is having on their decision. I'm inclined to agree with you that if we said 10 weeks, I'd be like, okay, well, I can see 10 weeks, see how it's going to work at home. It'll be 5 weeks actually, because they have to make a decision. They would have to make a decision by October if they were going to come back. If we decided to go with a quarter, that would, I could say I could try anything for 10 weeks or 5 weeks. We'll talk about it tomorrow night, and we'll see what the feedback is from the community. It's a good question.
And the other point, your first bullet about the athletics, I think we just need to make sure that, I think you made an important point that said that could change at any time. Just letting people know that can change at any time, so that they're well aware that, everything is a point in time kind of discussion.
So in the operational document, the framework document that I mentioned has the red in it. It says as of 8/14 or 8/13, the state agencies have decided this is the case. This may change at any time. And
Okay, as long as
we know
I
it will.
just don't want someone to say, well, I made my decision based upon something I read.
I'm guessing what's going to happen is that no one will be forced to make any decision until they decide to bring sports back.
Right.
Once they say sports are going to begin on September 21st, then you'll see, okay, well, here's the directive around that.
Well, you remember the different proposals for sports are, it's September 21st, and then if that doesn't work, they're going to propose a 3-tiered system starting January 1st, which does not fit with our February, our
Yes.
February date. So it could impact people. I think September's coming, it's gonna blow by. I think we're looking at January.
We talked about those athletic possibilities a couple of meetings ago, but Bill's identifying that if someone opts out of instruction, goes into fully remote until February, they're going to miss a season, potentially, of the winter sport. Again, we're not going to be intractable in this. I mean, we want to be able to meet the needs of families. We just need enough of a compass to be able to make the best decisions that we can to plan to get everyone in and out safely. And then from there, once we're good at what we're proposing, we're going to do, it'll allow us to readjust. Every time I've given a presentation, I've said, here are the plans today. We're going to have new guidance. We're going to have issues. We may have to close. We may have to reopen. And they will continue to adapt. But the first and foremost is providing a service to the families and children that are in our community. We want to provide an education in the best possible way. We believe that in-person instruction has an advantage over remote instruction. They both have a place, but our intention is to try and do in-person instruction to the greatest extent possible.
Brian, will testing go remote in January, like Regents?
We don't know. There hasn't been any guidance around that yet.
So how will our remote people take Regents?
There may not be any.
There may not be, okay.
There weren't any in June.
Well, I just didn't know, again, if you're learning remote, we ask you to come in January, take a Regents,
Or even say June, right? Yeah. Well, I think of it, oh boy, I'm thinking of what the gymnasium looks like when you have 175 kids taking the algebra Regents. It is spaced out. I don't know, I'm not positive that it's been 6 feet, so what we would do is we'd be creative, we would come up with an accommodation and make it happen. January is going to be a heck of a lot easier than what June will be, but we'll figure it out and know that all schools will be in the same boat. We'll all be trying to strategize around the same things.
Yep. Really not that hard on the same thing that we talked about.
But the dates are still kind of confusing. So October 15th is a decision for what set of?
Is if someone opts to go to remote in September, so their child is doing fully remote instruction beginning in September, they would have to decide by October 15th if they want their child to come back.
For when?
For in-person instruction at the elementary school.
At the elementary.
And then December, yes, including 5th grade.
And then they would come back when? When would that be?
I think it's November 28th or something is about.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. And then December 15th is for the middle school, high school.
Yes.
And yet they don't get to come back till February 15th.
Yeah, it's
So
about 6 weeks. Each of them is about 6 weeks.
Because of holidays and stuff like that, is that?
Well, October 15th to the end of November is 6 weeks, and December 15th to the end of January is 6 weeks as well. So that's where that's how the timeline was established.
Is it posted that way on our website so people know?
I think it should be very clear.
So we can say this is the date,
Yeah.
this is when you'll come
Sure,
back,
sure.
this is the date, because I had no idea that's what.
No, and I've
until
attended both sessions and I'm on one of the committees and stuff like that, and it's still a little gray to me exactly what those dates are and what they mean. I'm a
Got it.
decision here for this date. It's a decision here for this date, for this set of cohort of kids. It's not very clear.
No problem. You know, as I think back, I don't remember any place, it talks about the end of the trimester and end of the semester, and I can't think of any place where it calls out the date, so thank you. Yeah.
My wife explained it to me, but like I said, it was.
Plus, people don't have the wall calendar in their possession yet, so it's not like they have a place to look right now. We know we've held back a little bit on the wall calendar, and it's really to our advantage to have done so. We'll finalize it by next week, and what we'll end up doing is we'll send the PDF version out to everyone in email, and we'll place it on our website, or we'll send a link to our website. That way, at least they have an advantage. They'll be able to see it while they're waiting for the print version to come to their mailboxes. I know still a lot of families still live and breathe by where everything goes on there. I may have mentioned last time the school calendar will have holidays, vacations, state testing, Board of Education meetings, but it will not have the full spectrum of things that we are accustomed to seeing in a calendar at this point.
Open houses, concerts.
Well, I was,
It will not
I was
happen.
actually wondering about the A1, A2, B1, B2, because once you get to that part of it, families are going to be lost.
Yeah.
As adults, we have a hard time remembering if today is Tuesday or Wednesday
Mhm.
when we're at work. Now you need to remember if your child was an A2 and they go back in school on Friday, or there was a holiday in here, now it's not Monday, Tuesday, Friday anymore, now it's Tuesday, Wednesday, right? There's lots of things that are gonna happen, so it's gonna be a lot for families to keep straight, and kids can just say, no, today's a home day, Dad. Great, I think you're right, I don't know.
What was the reason for changing that?
It's on the same day? Or is that completely a variable?
Say it again, Tina. Sorry.
Were we able to keep family units on the same day? So if you have an 8th grader and a 12th grader, they are both A or both B?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Students in the same household, if they're at the 7 through 12 level, will be transported
Oh, it
together.
was geographic, right?
Say it again?
It was based on geography, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we would, same household. The only thing that would be different is if they're in 6th grade, they're there every day. And what we talked about, I mentioned the complexity of a bus driver driving a different route every day. Where at this point, we're intending on dedicating buses for just 5th and 6th graders. The routes will be a little longer, but we'll know the bus route will be the same every day. The kids will be together in 5th and 6th grade rather than with 5th, 6th, 7 through 12 on alternating days. It helps us protect the cohort a little better as well, but we thought that would be a better plan all around. So that's our intention. We hope we're able to deliver on that based on parents' responses so far.
6th grade is going every day? That's not clear to the community. Because it was originally elementary was going every day. 6th grade has never been elementary in this
Yeah.
district.
That's
That's
how
got
it was last
Well,
time.
what we said is we wanted students through grade 6 as our most.
I
vulnerable
understand
person.
the reasoning. I'm just telling you, it's not clear. That needs to be made abundantly clear because K-5 here is elementary,
Yeah,
6-8 is middle school.
We use the grade levels as we talk about scheduling and
Okay,
things like
I
that,
just
so
wanna make
that'll
sure
be
that's-
helpful.
Oh.
Again, I mean, Tina had mentioned it's confusing when you say middle school, but now middle school is 5 through 7, and when you say elementary,
Right.
elementary grades legitimately go to 6th grade. So it's rife. My middle school has always been.
So 5th graders are riding on buses with elementary kids?
5th graders will be on buses with 6th graders.
Okay.
5th and 6th grade together.
Okay.
Yeah. Because their daily schedule is different than the elementary kids.
So what was the impetus for changing the fully remote Wednesday thing? Because I've heard two concerns about it. Number one, people are now wondering when that deep cleaning is going to happen because it doesn't really leave us any time. And two, that schedule gave them a set schedule every week so that they could plan in advance which days they could work or couldn't work. This rotating schedule has those in-school days change every single week. And like Jason said, not only is it really hard to keep track of, but it's never the same.
Throw a holiday in there, and everything shifts.
Right.
So, there's are a lot of schools that thought about it. Every school that I've ever known of has alternating days. They have a 1 AB day or a 1-2 or a 1-2-3-4 day, especially schools that may block schedule. They have 4-day rotation. And I know.
I
Yeah.
work in a block schedule where it's a 4-day, where it's a 2-day rotation, so I understand
Yeah.
that. But as soon as you throw in the fact that the other 2 days you're not going to be in the building,
I know that it is a totally different story. You can show up and not know you're supposed to go to math.
Right.
But if you show up and you're not supposed to be there, well, actually, your bus won't pick you up, but you might drive to school or be dropped off.
well, and the big reason for the parents wanting their kids in school is so they can go back to work.
Right.
And if they don't have the same days every week, it's almost impossible for them to schedule going back to work.
Well, it is our 7th through 12th graders.
Right.
It's not our younger students who will be on that rotating schedule. So that'll help a little bit. And we've talked about 5 through 7, 5 through 8 being the breaking point where people legitimately feel like they need to be home to supervise. And they are comfortable with their children being at home or going to a neighbor's house.
Isn't pre-K on that schedule though too?
We've been discussing that because we got tons of feedback last night.
Okay, because
So-
you showed that last night with the 2-2 and the holiday.
So we went right to the drawing board about halfway through the meeting last night, based on some of the feedback from the UPK families that were on there. So Fred will talk about that a little bit during his presentation. No, just kidding. Fred will talk about it a
It
little
does
bit.
make me wonder if we can think about a fixed days for.
I was
secondary.
trying to think maybe if it could be Monday, Tuesday, and every other Friday, and Wednesday, Thursday, and every other Friday, just so it was the same 2 days
Yeah.
each week, so parents could plan ahead.
And that's where we kind of landed on for pre-K. That was the feedback from pre-K parents as well, that we can at least know fixed days and have an alternate, whatever day that is, Friday, Wednesday, whatever.
Right.
They can at least plan for childcare appropriately. So that is, we didn't think of it for the secondary schedule, but we'll bring that back to the reopening committee.
Another good point for discussion tomorrow night.
No, when they have the 2 remote days, I mean, they're going to be expected to be learning from home, correct? And be on the computer for 40 minutes for a class for the entire 5 hours, correct?
Yep, we'll talk about that.
So that was just one question, because then I think last night, one of the things that came out is kids that are remote only have to check in at 9 o'clock and 9:30 and 10, but then the kids that are going to school have to check in for the whole 5 hours.
It'll be different based on grade level.
Got it?
Yeah, the proposal that we shared last night was elementary having a little bit different procedure for how we do remote learning, because it is different. At the 7 through 12 level, we're talking about basically live streaming the class. The teacher with the camera on themselves teaching the class. We just thought about it in context. It doesn't work exactly the same way in the elementary school. There's a lot of nuance around it. So, and we'll show that elementary school model so you can see what that looks like if a child chooses fully remote in elementary. I mean, I think that I'm glad we're discussing these things now, and when we get to those slides, we'll just have already broached it, so it's fine. So Brady asked about the Wednesdays. What we had heard is having children at home on Wednesdays was superbly impactful on our families. We've talked about people being able to go back to work, as you talked about, how they're able to schedule childcare. It's already an impact because some of the days are shortened. Compounding that by saying that you have to figure out childcare all day on Wednesdays, it was like a rallying cry. So we're being responsive to families, and my response about the deep cleaning is, if we're not deep cleaning every day, then we should be cleaning every day. We're going to clean to the extent that things are disinfected and sanitized and ready for the group to come back.
So have we hired more custodians to do that? Because we know before pre-COVID, they couldn't keep up.
The difference is reallocating staff, and Bill is working with, he'll be working with the union to talk through how we allocate the staff in order to do that. It may mean prioritizing differently, but this is the priority right now.
Is there gonna be like a pre-check at some point in time in the morning, someone going through and saying, this has been cleaned or has not, so that there's an opportunity to clean a room that might not have been cleaned in advance of students and staff getting there?
I think my preference, what would ordinarily happen is the lead or the head at night or at the end of the day would go through and verify that those things actually happen. So the lead and head, they usually work the day shift, but they come in at 5:30 or 6. So there is time for them to validate in the morning.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there is, because we've talked about this in past years with things. We know that there's a scheduled routine of what's supposed to happen. I don't know how much checking there is done by the supervisors to ensure that that has been done, right? And in this, I'll call it hyper critical time period, we need to put checks in place.
Yeah, this isn't a garbage can not being emptied. This is something that people are unquestionably, they want to know it was done exactly as it's supposed to be done.
Right. And there are many times that we are understaffed in that area to where they can't get to everything. So we got to have a plan to get more people in, to get more time on the clock, whatever it takes. to get this stuff done. This is not something that can go by even for a day.
I mean, ideally, we wouldn't have as big a need for things like extracurriculars and sports and performances in the auditorium. So where we had to put a lot of staff for those high visibility areas now should be focused on the classrooms, correct? I mean, in an ideal
Yes.
world.
And a shortened day, it changes the game. You know, on a day, for instance, when we have a reduced day because of professional development, the custodial staff come in 2.5 hours early and they start their work. They'll be able to start their work sooner and be able to get into classrooms a little differently than they have been in the
But
past.
they also, if they start sooner, then they also leave sooner. That doesn't
Yes,
mean
they do.
we don't get any more time out of it.
And I thought we were leveraging every space in the schools, meaning potentially we are using the auditorium for something, we're using gyms for something. So
You're
we
right.
can't,
Yeah.
you know, there aren't a lot of corners
Yeah.
to cut here.
Yep. Bill's aware, and it's a question that's been asked in every survey and every live forum that we've had, is what are we doing to ramp up the cleaning protocols?
Yeah, one other question that came up, and I think there was a changed answer between one meeting and another meeting, was the air filtration. I think Bill said that we would keep to the minimum level in the first live stream, which I immediately wrote down, and then the second one is the term maximum was used. So where will the school district be with filtration? Because I know that I'm getting asked within my family, even by neighbors and other people, because it wasn't consistent. So I just want to make sure we understand where it is. And then within the positioning of students within rooms, we're not putting someone right by like an air return that they're going to get all the recycled air or get exposed to the air more than the other students in that classroom? Because you may get parents say, I don't want my kid there.
It's like the seat behind the post or the.
Right? So I don't know. I know you guys are planning the seats and everything, how that would be. That will be like the middle row on an airplane, or
Yeah, exactly, the middle seat.
It might be beneficial to have Bill come in before school opens and give a recap of what we used to do and what we're doing now based on more information. Just to put
that's a great
people's
idea.
minds at ease about how we are going to actually change up the way we do things.
So a question about ventilation, I'm sure probably what Bill had said was our ventilation systems meet the minimum standard for state education department of what we're supposed to do. In other words, they meet the standard.
Right.
They're filtrating air, they have the correct combination of outside air and existing recycled air. And anything beyond that is going to be an improvement on what we initially had. So the question that has been posed, and we've been talking about with some of the unions as well, is how do we improve the status of our effective code compliant systems, especially the systems that are 50 years old or more in some instances, right?
I thought we had to meet to CDC level. We don't?
There is no, did you say, you mean Department of Health?
It's a New York State.
Well,
I
I
think
think they reference CDC also, so one's piggybacking off the other. But you referenced state ed, which I didn't think they were making the decision. I
No.
thought Department of Health or CDC was saying, this is what you should have in place when you're going to bring all the students in. Even at whatever reduction that we are, there has to be a minimum filtration of the
Recycling.
air so that it's not just the same recycled air flowing through. And I don't know if that's the same or different than what state ed had said.
The guidance that came out from the Department of Health and State Education Department has not a single number or piece of data. What they say is air filtration should be adjusted to its maximum capacity, maximum airflow capacity, and maximum amount of fresh air intake. Those are the only two qualifiers. It doesn't say MERV 13, it doesn't say circulating the classroom air 14 times an hour. It's just to the best of its capacity,
So-
and that's where they.
So what does New York State say? Because they came up with some parameter for malls to open, right?
Because they're privately owned. It's why,
But-
it's why our state buildings don't have those numbers either.
I don't know, we're not back in yet.
Yeah.
So, that's the question I have, is that, I just want to make sure that we're clear and that we are within what we should be, because I don't want to bring everyone back if we're not
Right.
filtering the air properly.
Understood. And so that's another, well, Bill's coming back to present, that's another area that he
Yeah.
can certainly speak to. There's going to be a meeting either this week or the beginning of next week with our new architects and engineers to have that specific discussion. It'll be their responsibility to work with the vendor who manufactured these, the manufacturer who manufactured these air systems, to ensure that we actually are getting the maximum possible best scenario from the equipment that we have right now.
We're meeting tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Myself in the union, and we're gonna go through some of those things.
It's good, I got a few things to bring up after.
And the last thing on the list there is that because of the survey responses, we feel confident that we'll be able to open school with elementary schools both starting at the same time. Remember when we came together last time, high school, middle school was at 7:30, Peterby was at 8:45, and Becker was at 10. Again, the families with children in multiple buildings were in such distress because they didn't know, even if they were at home, how to deal with children coming and going every half an hour. So moving the two elementary schools back together is a big deal. Just as with the athletics thing, I'm going to forewarn you and say, in the event that families are unable to follow through and be able to assist by transporting their children, we very well may have to go back to a staggered day again. Will not be a popular choice, but for us to be able to deliver our children to and from school, it may have to be changed.
Is that highly dependent on the availability of bus drivers too? So if we have, there's got to be some sort of threshold there that says,
Yeah.
once we get to that, we can't sustain the same time.
People have asked, would this be resolved if we bought more buses? We all know that that's not the resolution. The resolution is how many drivers we know we can put on the road at any given time. The threshold for elementary school on every other year has been 22 buses total, 11 at each building, which allows us to transport those students who ride the bus. We knew that with the distancing protocols, we'd need 32 bus runs, which is untenable. There's no way we could have put 32 buses on the road for two reasons. One is we don't have 32 of those 65 passenger buses, but we wouldn't have 32 drivers to drive them anyway. So we believe that with the 20% of families who believe they'll go to remote instruction and the 40% of families of those who are coming to school saying, I'll be transporting my child, we have a margin where we can safely open, and we're not so fragile that if one person decides not to drive, that's it, the whole thing collapses. Because we certainly don't want to make an assertion to families and say, we're all set, we're going to do this, and then in the first week have it all collapse on itself and then say, sorry about that, you're going to have to figure out something new, a new way to work. We want to be able to, we have enough of a margin where we can do this with some confidence. If some people back out and they say, for whatever reason, I had a change of working conditions or my car isn't working, so they need to go back on the bus, we think that we can sustain at least some of that without having to make any drastic changes.
What comes out for slated now?
We're going to hop to it. And it's much better if we look at it, because there's the other thing that we know. I am going to speak quickly and kind of fly through this. So if you need me to slow down or stop, please ask me to do so. Health checks are a hot topic. The State Education Department and the Department of Health require school districts to spot check students. Schools are not required to take temperature checks of every child when they enter a building. And people have asked, why aren't you testing every child when they come into school? And I know that family, they'll never check their child before they leave for school. We expect families to do a health check on their children. We expect every staff member to do a health check before they come in, and staff are required by regulation to report that in print. They have to attest that they passed the health check. We want families to do it, and we are going to take the responsibility of performing random checks, which is a component of the regulation, on no fewer than 20% of our students each day. We may do that as they exit a bus, we may do that as they enter one entrance of a building, or we may call them down by classes and do a health check that way. And the health check will consist of temperature. That's the one parameter that they want us to measure. Those of you who have read or watched the news know that temperature is one indicator of the potential virus, and it is not always an indicator of someone who has the virus. There is a list of indicators as part of the attestation. There's about 14 things on that list, and that's what families will have to complete every day along with staff. If we were to health check every child by temperature every day, for instance, in front of an entry door, first of all, it is an inordinately flawed system because children come in from the outside air, which is 22 degrees or 100 degrees, and it won't be accurate until their body regulates to the temperature of the building. So if we were to do full body scanners or have someone positioned at every door and decided to do this, we wouldn't actually be able to get accurate readings until every person had acclimated to the conditions of the building. So I know it's a dream to say you should check everyone all day long, but the reason why we're wearing masks, the reasons why we're distancing, we're practicing good hand hygiene, and we're practicing good sanitization practices, is because we expect all of us at the grocery store, at the library, or in school may be near someone who has the virus. We have these other protocols in place to protect us. The reason why we're saying we're wearing masks is we want everyone to be protected. We'll spot check at this juncture, and students who exhibit symptoms will be looked at, and they may be placed in isolation and sent home based on the health check criteria. We'll also be sharing what the criteria are for someone to come back. So, comments about health checks?
So, Brian, with regards to this, if somebody has a high temperature or whatever, maybe not extremely high, but higher than normal.
100 degrees, yeah.
They would be potentially isolated, sent home. Is there, if they don't have a temperature the next day, do they come back, or is there rules? I mean, because temperature doesn't always mean COVID. Are we requiring them?
And we agree that little kids especially are sick all the time. They throw up on themselves, they don't even know they're sick, they have temperatures, they have coughs, they have runny noses, they have allergies. There will be a checklist of criteria that allows someone to come back. There are some that will push it to the threshold where you need to get tested.
Yeah.
And there are some that are you still exhibiting the symptoms? Are you exhibiting any of the other symptoms that allows people to return, not after 14 days, but after a short amount of time.
But that'll be outlined, that'll be somewhere so that parents can see it, so that they understand that when there's when this happens, this is the protocol.
There's a way out. When it happens, there's a way out. It doesn't mean 14 days in quarantine.
Dr. Bailey, just real quick, one thing I noticed last night and even tonight when you did this slide here, you used the word testing. I was very confused when I heard the word testing. I immediately thought, wow, we're going to test 20% of the population. No, we're doing a self-health check, because I don't see the word testing up there, right?
Yes, you're correct.
So I'm just going to say, when you do it and you say it again, it threw me for a curveball.
Yeah, it is checking, it is not testing. And you may know that the new state regulations require us to have a plan for how we're going to check. And when someone does exhibit symptoms, such as a staff member who may exhibit one or more symptoms of COVID, it is the Department of Health who will assist us in testing. And to be honest, we will always want to go through the Department of Health, primarily because we as essential employees have a prioritization in this process. But if I went to my general practitioner, or I went to First Stop Medical, I go in the queue with every single other person in the universe. It could take 2 weeks for me to get my response back, or my results back. So we have a protocol that we will be adhering to the Department of Health's recommendations, and we'll be using their testing facilities when we get to an event. So no school district has the ability or the permission to test people. We want to use those folks that are experts in the field when we get there.
Have we done anything with the app, the self-health check yet?
Say that again?
Have we done anything to get that app on the phones and stuff for the self-help?
We will.
I saw that in
and-
the email, and I know that.
Yeah, and know that right now, any one of us has the ability to actually place it on our phone as a shortcut. It's on my, on my home screen on my phone. I just click it, it opens the thing, and I do it. So, barring our ability to do that as a startup, we'll send people. First, we can push it out to every child's Chromebook. That's a real quick way to get it done. So, the grade levels that'll have Chromebooks home, easy breezy. But for folks who want it on their phones, all they have to do is just put a shortcut on their home screen, and it's there every day. It's the first thing that they can click on. As of right now, we've been emailing it to staff every day at 5:30 in the morning, so they go to their email and it's there. But we've held back from going through the technical of here's how you add it to your phone, because some people's heads explode when you have them try and manipulate something on their phone. Our goal is to move to an app-based thing where it's either a push or it's always the first thing that appears on the app so people can get to it.
Is that something you're looking to do for the families as well?
And we can, but as a reminder, families need not report out every day. They're supposed to be self-checking. They are not mandated to report out. And we have some equity issues of families who have technology and those who don't, and we would be collecting pieces of paper from families who filled it out by hand. It's rife with things that wouldn't work right.
So they have to, we're expecting them to do the temperature check, but we're not expecting them to report anything?
The requirement by regulation is that every family complete a self-health check for their child before they leave for school.
Complete it for the district, though? They send it?
No, they're not expected, they're not required to report out to any entity.
So that has less teeth than we thought it had before. They won't do anything because they don't have to report it. I mean, what if they do the self-health check and, oh yeah, he's got a fever. Oh, we'll send him anyway. They don't have to report it? They don't have to do anything? That's crazy. Why would we expect the adults to do it, but not the kids?
It's a regulation, and again, you're 1,200 students per day coming in. It's a great question.
I mean, I thought all along it was everybody does this thing, submits it. If it shows, if you check yes, then you can't come in, and the district knows you can't come in because you checked yes. Well, they could check yes on every box and still send them in because we don't have any idea. Who cares? That doesn't make any sense at all.
There's nothing behind not doing it.
There is, but in any given day, on any given day, we have the same issues and concerns with families who send their children in who they know are not feeling well.
Right, but we're trying to remedy that by using, this, whatever it is, this health check to say you have to do this. But if you don't have to do it, because you don't, because there's no reporting of it, nobody's going to do it. There's no way we can make them submit it just like anybody else that enters the building?
Is it possible that someone would do it and would lie on it?
Absolutely.
Which one is the better of the evils? That's the question.
Well, I think we ought to, if they don't do it at all, then how do we?
We want them to do it. It's their responsibility. It's a mandate, it's a regulation from New York State that they are to do it before their child comes to school.
Well, every correspondence you sent out said anybody that enters our building will complete one of these self-health checks.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we've said.
We're the only ones actually completing it, because
Well-
we're the only ones required to submit it.
Adults are.
Staff.
Staff, yes.
I mean, I don't know how you would, if you have 600 kids in a high school, what are you gonna do? At 7:25, print out a report and say, these 200 people haven't checked in, go out to the door and say, you guys, you gotta go home, you didn't check in yet, or
that's
you're
what
gonna
we
make
were
them do the course.
Sit in the office until the parent comes in to fill the form.
That's what we were expecting, is that there would be a report that came out ahead that said, these kids haven't done it, they have to do it when they get here.
Right. Just like a
Right? That's what, isn't that what we were told?
It'd be a pre-check.
It's 4 questions, and, you look at it and you go, yes, yes, no, whatever. But why are we?
Setting the expectation and knowing that there is something that is reported, you'll get 70% or better, right? of parents doing it. Right now, you have nothing, so parents won't necessarily do it at all because they'll be like, ah, he looks good, she looks good, good to go. You know, so there's nothing behind it.
Problem is the 30% that aren't going to do it,
Yep.
or the 30% that you have to.
There would be the 30% that
You
don't
have
wear their
to-
mask all day long, that you're
Right.
chasing around all day long, so it's kind of the same as the normal.
I guess the only thing you would have to do is you'd have to make it code of conduct, right? That would be the only thing to hold somebody
Well,
accountable for that.
The way to audit it is if you're doing your temperature check on 20% of the students anyways. If somebody has an elevated temperature, you supposedly self-checked before coming in, and now you got 102 fever.
But it's kind of the same thing about when the, kid's sitting at the bus stop and he doesn't have a mask and you let him on the bus. I mean, let all the kids on the bus, how you gonna check if they've taken that test or not? It's probably gonna be a legal issue, legal thing, just like with a mask. I don't know, you'd have to ask Ryan. Yeah.
The missing piece is, it's just an equity issue. For the families who have ready access to technology, they would be able to do a quick check and click the box and before they send their child in. And for the 7% of our population who doesn't have ready access, they would have to do something different in order to do that, and their child would have to hand it in when they entered the building every morning. What I'm just trying to attest to get from everybody is will it be doing the thing that you think will prevent something from happening? As I said, will making someone do it and having them attest that they did it and not telling the truth, or someone being distrustful and not doing it at home at all?
I think it becomes a non-issue if there's no reporting, it's not required. It's not even going to enter my mind. Why would I bother? At least if I know that I've got to report it, I'm going to put some thought into it. And most people, I would like to believe, are good and going to follow through and do what they say. But if you're not telling,
And I would say if there's an internet problem, aren't we giving
everybody's
Chromebooks
gotta
to
have
everyone?
access.
Can't we put an app on a Chromebook that just doesn't require an internet connection to do a self-check, and then it can be just flipped open? You can say, okay, here's the self-check for them.
Yeah, and we're closing the gap too for those families without internet as well. We've got a plan for that, so that could, narrow the margins so that it isn't an equity issue, and we could do that. I think the Chromebooks are probably the key for the majority of students because it can be, like I said, the great thing about the Chromebooks is we have some creative control over that. We can push out what the home screen is, we can push out information to every single one of them. This can be a component of that. So families do have to compelled to do it. And then the other nice thing about the Chromebook is it is open it and type in your password and you're there. It's not like a laptop that has a lot of boot up time,
I mean, couldn't you,
To smartphones, they readily available. So why wouldn't you have something that is at least app-based for a family to log into?
Yeah.
Because I agree, if there's no check, it's just not going to happen. I wouldn't do it if I didn't know I had to do it. I don't.
Human nature, yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
we'll work
and
on
you
it.
want it to become part of a good habit, and in order to do that, you have to do it over and over again. And
Right.
the only way you're going to commit to doing it over and over again is if you know someone's checking that it's been done.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, I mean, honestly, how many faculty grab the thermometer and check the thermometer when they answer that question? Or do they just go, feel good?
We're having two arguments here. We're having the argument that everyone's going to lie, and we're having the argument that they won't.
But honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
we go to work every day, and I mean, Teddy has to do it all the time. I have to do
Yeah.
it. So, if you're checking this, saying, yeah, okay, I feel good, it's because you feel good. You may have a low grade fever that happens to be 99.7, which fundamentally is exceeding the limit. But I didn't note it. I had a headache, whatever.
But I think
my allergies.
if this was a
so-
year ago, I think we would have thought nothing of just
Correct.
going to work like normal.
Yeah.
Now, I would think twice, and I would say, okay, I'm going to check my temperature just to be safe. Same thing with my
But
kids.
did you today to come here? Did you take your
No.
temperature? I didn't either.
Doesn't say you have
I
to.
took it this morning when I went to work, right?
I had it in the truck. We could have used it before you came in.
But I'm just saying that, you know.
He took his in the truck.
So even that, you know, like now, but if you have nothing behind it, like at least here, I acknowledge that I felt good. If I ended up getting here and I didn't feel good, well, then basically I just didn't do what I was supposed to do. If you don't even have that, there's nothing. You have nothing from the families.
We'll work on it.
Their kids showed up, you know, and you're at least putting something out there that it's just like.
I would say that the first thing that anybody does when they log into their account would be to present it.
Yeah, we just have to have them do it at home before they come in. That's the key. But we'll work on it. I think there is a window to get it done. What I'm worried about is, you know, the discussion we just had. So we're creating the labor of doing it, knowing that people might just go, and this is a significant labor.
But maybe we're at least making people think about it.
Correct.
And we do want people to think about it.
Right, because if you didn't tell us we had to do it and submit it before we came here, none of us would even think about it. We would just come in.
Sure. And again, it's human nature. And look at a family that has 2 elementary kids and a middle school kid. It is a 3-ring circus every morning.
But
So
wouldn't you, I mean, by doing that, you could have a family saying, listen, I don't have a thermometer. That would be good to know, right? That would be good to know as a school district that, okay, this family doesn't even have a thermometer. Let me at least get them a thermometer. So they're thinking about it. They've at least thought about it now and said, you know what, I want to be able to check my kids before they go to school. I don't have it, you know? Thermometers aren't cheap. It's not like, you know, and getting them at this point is difficult too, but.
We have, I reached out to St. Peter's Healthcare, who's been a partner with us. Ms. Sinscali was one of our parents. So they are working on it for us. They think they might be able to get us some for our families. It came up at one of our reopening committees.
And maybe that could be like part of the backpack, you know, and say, okay, here's kids that need back, you know, and all this other stuff. Here's a thermometer in there too. I don't know, it's something that we need to consider.
All right.
okay. What is that? 2 slides now?
Yeah, we're gonna have to move it along with your hands to that presentation.
Okay, that's good. We talked about this already. The UPK4 would just be on their regular bus runs Monday through Friday. Grades 5 and 6 will likely have their own bus routes because they're on a different schedule than they're here every day, whereas not all the 7 to 12 kids are. And then at 7 to 12, they'll be picked up by catchment. It may not be strictly A.W. Becker catchment or Peter B. because we want to balance the classes that are in person on any given day, but it'll be pretty close. And every person, every child in a household will be coming to school at the same time if they're in grades 7 to 12. They're able to sit together as well. So here's the meat and potatoes. So we'd asked about when the start time would be at the elementary school. Fred's been working on with the elementary team, reopening team and committees, and I think one of you folks has been too. Is it?
It's Miss Hillsburst. She's not.
Oh, okay. So Kristen was working on the committee as well. But Fred, you want to talk through the schedule a little bit and why it looks this way?
Sure, and I just wanted to mention as well that a parent did contact me after our forum last night and was looking at the minutes for English and math and noticed that last year we had some additional time for those content. So we just this was the minimum time for students in classrooms. So because of, especially if you think of the A.W. Becker campus, we'll need to be able to stagger times for drop off and pickup. Students will start coming into classrooms at 8:35. We expect a supervisory adult to be there, preferably the teacher, into classrooms, so they will start to trickle in. During that time, there will be a check-in, which will not only be utilized for social emotional check-in, but also they could start to individualize and differentiate academics as well for those students. Hopefully within the first couple of weeks, there'll be a routine and pattern for that. So then, again, minimally the times for ELA math, a 45-minute lunch and special combination will occur. And then the reopening committee this past week really talked a little bit more in depth about what mask breaks will look like. The elementary reopening committee wanted at least 2, and they would prefer them to be outside because they know that their youngest learners who might be sitting there for a long period of time needed to get out of seats. So they are looking at creating a schedule for that. We all know we live in the Northeast, so what does that look like in weather conditions? Utilizing any outdoor space that might have a covering was a suggestion, especially those front areas where they're that overhang there. I don't know what that's technically called. Not
Front
a porch.
porch.
Front porch area.
Front porch.
And then we would end the day with dismissal as on a staggered schedule as well. There are some conversations regarding bus pickup. So if you're looking at bus students, it looks like they have a shorter day. So then there are conversations regarding the possibility of bus pickup being second at the end and parent pickup being first. But again, we're thinking of traffic flow with the overwhelming number of families who are now considering transporting their kids. We want to make sure that we're being safe on campus.
About the mask break at the middle school and high school level?
This is just elementary
Oh, no,
for now.
okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Gotcha. Check.
What-
Missed that one.
What's the plan if parents don't make the drop off? Take them back home. Do they have to sit and wait till the buses are done, right? Because you're trying to stagger the amount, the flow and all that, and you're trying to
Sure.
stagger the amount of kids moving through entry points, right? So now, 15 parents didn't quite make the 8:55 cutoff. They showed up at 9:02. Are they waiting?
It probably depends what building you're at.
Okay.
Because A.W. Becker, you'll be waiting. Peter B, you might have the opportunity because their flow of traffic will look different.
I think as we communicate this out, as school is approaching starting, these are things that need to be very, very clear to families, is that you volunteered to bring your child in. There's some critical points that are going to be much more difficult because of the things that we have to deal with. So the flexibility won't be there. So please don't be upset if we tell you to sit and wait for 10 minutes because you happen to be running late today. Right?
We talked
This-
yeah.
and now you're running later.
And we talked about making sure we have additional staff, especially for the first couple of weeks, possible local law enforcement as well to help direct traffic, just so we get that routine sound, the flow of traffic down. It's going to be really important.
Fred, with the 45-minute lunch special in classroom, is there going to be some sort of cleaning after that? So you're probably demasking, opening up lunches, you have everything all over. My guess is there's a coordination between if they're buying lunch versus bringing lunch, how that's going to work, if it's going to be brought to the classroom. But is there any sort of disinfectant that's going on after that because you've had hands and everything everywhere? We could be. I don't know, but
So we've taught a lot about lunch, especially for the students who are stationary. In other words, this is my desk, it's my desk all day. For the lunch period, we were talking about having a placemat like you would at the Silver Spoon, where kids are able to put their lunch on the placemat on the desk that they work on all day, because we know kids can be messy, and it isn't uncommon for a kid to clean their desk, not disinfect their desk, but so they would be able to take whatever's at the end of their lunch and just take that mat and just throw it in the garbage, all of it in the garbage. We will still expect students to clean up after themselves as they ordinarily would, but students will not be disinfecting or sanitizing. They will not be using those chemicals. They might use whatever's ordinarily been going on in elementary schools since the dawn of time. But one thing that we feel better about is the fact that it's their workspace from beginning to end of the day.
Right.
That'll significantly reduce any cross-contamination of people.
because it's individual desks.
Correct.
instead of-
Yeah.
And they're 6 feet apart.
Gotcha.
There was discussion regarding, again, thinking about our youngest learners and what specials look like for physical education, taking them outside to our fields, making sure that they're distanced appropriately. So after lunch, being able to do some of that, just to get them out, get some fresh air. So PE will have to look different in the classroom based off different guidelines for that.
Fred, some parents asked me about recess, and I didn't know the answer.
We, at this point, are not scheduled for recess because we have specials that are combined with lunches. So that would replace their recess time.
Okay. Some parents asked in the conversation last night and last week, and in the survey, why a shortened day? Especially we bring the elementary schools back together, let's let it rip, go 9 to 3:30, just as we ordinarily would. There's some caveats that unquestionably impact this. This is a 5-hour day, approximately 5-hour day, where kids are predominantly stationary. We're talking about an age level with attention spans that are short, whose physicality is high. Extending the day beyond 5 hours may be mean, number one. The second thing is, if you remember, we created this shortened day out of an imminent need because of the transportation issues. In other words, we had to stagger the day, 3 different start times so we could get the kids to and from school. I began this conversation by saying we may have to go back to that because we have an issue where people can't transport as they thought they could. The 5-hour day is the only way to have accomplished that. In other words, get all the kids in, all the kids back out. So some compelling reasons why we're still at that time period. And you can also see we hope to become military tight on these times of pickup and drop off. We're being a little generous here and hope that we can actually make it even tighter so the instructional day becomes longer because we're able to more efficiently get students in and out.
Art, music
Correct. So music.
during lunch?
So they would have their 20 minutes. Most students take about 20 minutes to eat. So they would be, the special area teachers would be in there to help supervise lunches and then start to teach content as well.
After lunch.
After lunch or before lunch, depending on what the schedule looks like. What they're trying to do is look at the schedule to see if it can be extended, so it's not just a 20-25 minute period of special, that it would actually be longer than that.
Rick, does that mean that they're gonna bring lunches to classrooms? Like, because that's the only way you can do that 20-minute thing is if it's already there, right?
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be lunch trays, it's going to be bags or some prepackaged thing, because we
Well,
know
whatever
trays.
can fit on the mat.
So
That's right. There'll be pictures of where everything goes.
they're going to, I'm assuming you're going to have to stagger lunchtime because,
Yes.
I mean, if you have 15 classrooms and one art teacher, it's hard for to be in the same place for the same 45 minutes.
And Teddy actually came across the last thing. We only have so many staff in a building, and especially around our special area teachers. They are the thing that allows this to happen. If the day were longer, we would run out of resource. We'd run out of the human beings to do the things that we need to do during the course of the day. It's like a clockwork when you look at it, how all the pieces come together. And I'm amazed at the work that the elementary committee has done to get this far. Because some of the parameters are just unbelievably difficult to navigate. Middle school and high school are kind of similar, and I'll let Fred discuss them a little bit. As we mentioned, 5th and 6th grade will be in school every day. And as Laura said this morning, we did a presentation for staff this morning for an hour and a half, and Laura said, we're blessed with 3 different schedules. Our 6th graders will be different than 7th, 5th different than 6th, different than 7th.
And I just want to mention that that's, again, as Dr. Bailey said, our phrase lately has been as of today. I do know that counselors are working really creatively on making sure that this can occur. 8th grade will follow, as of today, 8th grade will follow more of a 9-period schedule, just to mirror, and it actually really assists with some of the schedules that will be happening at the high school level. 7th grade will still be an 8-period. 6th grade, if they're able to do a bell-style schedule, will also follow an 8-period as well.
8 block.
8 block.
And we'll talk about blocks in a second, but the other thing that's important to note is, to whatever extent possible, and it's a lot easier in these grade levels, if there has to be a change, we want the adult to move. We don't want to encourage the kids to move. So in 6th grade, we'll be asking the teachers to rotate to the best extent possible.
7th grade as well.
Okay. And eighth grade at the high school, we're going to try and do that as well.
And will the eighth grade teachers be in the high school teaching the eighth grade students? Is that what it will be?
For the most part, yeah. I don't think there's anyone physically moving between buildings, so all of the eighth grade teachers were able to come to the high
Okay,
school.
'cause I wasn't sure. I thought there were some teachers that did both seventh and eighth.
They did, but they were able to get a cohort of eighth grade
Gotcha.
teachers over here, which will also help some with high school schedule.
Will they
as well.
still do honors?
They will still do. There is an honors cohort, yes.
Okay.
So we've used the word block schedule in middle school and high school, and it's a modified block schedule. Traditional block schedule is usually 80 minutes, 2 40-minute halves. That's what most districts do when they do that. And there's some very compelling reasons for us to even consider this. First, it is student safety and staff safety in mind. If we were to run a 9-period day on a compressed 5 hours or on a full day, that's really 11 times you're going to see the students wandering through the hall. It's too much, and we're running in cohort models, so we'll have an A group and a B group for students, but in addition to that, we don't want them moving all day long. So by going to approximately 55-minute period, it's going to significantly aid in our ability to keep students and staff safe. The second thing is, we know that for those of our students that are about to graduate and go off into the world, if they end up going to college, college is not a 9-period day. College is an extended class period once or twice a week where you do the work, you engage deeply in the learning, you have an opportunity to work with your peers during that class, and then you go off and you do independent work. You're tasked with tackling some things on your own. And if we're not teaching kids to do that right now, we're in trouble. The other thing was that one of our largest complaints from last spring, March to June, is from the student end and from some of the families who are having to help them, is navigating 6 to 7 classes a day and the content from 6 to 7 classes a day and the teacher expectations from 6 to 7 teachers a day was soul crushing for some of our kids. They didn't know where they were coming or going. And then to add to that, of course, one teacher would do a Google Meet, the next teacher would do Google Classroom, the next teacher would send a PDF of a document they had to print out and do. So we want to have a streamlined approach to how we're delivering instruction. We want to limit movement. We want to allow students to really engage in the topic. And of course, the only drawback of this is that students would be meeting less frequently. That's where I say the independent work becomes some of the responsibility of kids as we go through. So the way the schedule would work, and I apologize, it's kind of small, the high school, middle school would essentially operate on a 2-day schedule. And that, as Fred mentioned, the middle school grades 7 and 8 will be doing an 8 block, so 4 blocks on day 1 and 4 blocks on day 2.
7th grade. Yep.
7th grade.
7th grade will do
7th grade.
8 blocks. 8th grade will follow this schedule.
And then 8 through 12 will be doing this schedule, so it's 1 through 4 and then 30 minutes of block 5. And then on the following day, the block 5 teacher gets to see the students again. So they get an extra 5 minutes in their class because we recognize there's like transition issues as kids come in and out of a classroom. The mask breaks at the secondary level, they just came to that aha moment yesterday about that. And they want to build it into each of the blocks. They want to conclude the block with a mask break. One huge reason to do that is we don't want kids to feel like they need to take a break when they go out in the hall. So if it's pre-planned, then students know the expectation of when they need to put it back on, they can do that. And they've talked about a few things. They talked about a bell that designates when that happens. They've talked about doing like social emotional activities or something over the PA or wellness during that time. So what they did is they're moving lunch outside of the day. Students will pick up their lunches as they leave. And students who get breakfast, they'll pick up their breakfast for the following day when they leave. that buys them, all the middle school and high school, that buys them time to deliver instruction and do some other things. So you see that they only have a 15-minute staggered arrival and a staggered dismissal. It's less time because we know that their students will have fewer needs than they do at the elementary school when they're dropping off and picking up. And what did I miss, Fred?
Just want to mention, when you show this to people, I know that you're trying to work holidays in, but I can tell you the first time I looked at it, I'm like, boy, I don't want to be on the B block, because there's so many gaps demonstrated in your example. It looks like they're being seen less. I know it's not real, but
What I did
gosh,
in the,
don't work 2 holidays in a row.
You're exactly right. What I actually did when I put it in the framework that I put on the website
Yeah.
tonight, I put a little key at the bottom that says off equals vacation or holiday.
Right. But if you were looking at it, and because you're trying to do that, it looks like there's extent, because it looks like in your example
Yes.
that the B is always falling on, they have Thursday, Friday, and you have a holiday Monday. They're not going to be seen till Tuesday.
Yeah.
And A block, you have the 2 days, and then you have something.
So, in Bray's conversation that he staged earlier is this it's potentially be confusing to families because you just had a vacation or you had a 3-day weekend. Is it an A one day?
Well, yeah,
Or
we got
is
to
it
be
a
solid on those.
B2
coming
day?
back. Yeah.
We've been talking, similar to the
Remind
the discussion we had about the attestation, of health attestation, we've been talking about what's the thing that opens up first thing for anybody that says A1, so they know. That's one option.
Chromebook.
And the secondary option is to make it fixed, but even if we alternated Wednesdays or Fridays, you're still gonna have people who will need to know where do they go to find out.
Isn't there a calendar app on their Chromebook that we can do this, that we can load?
Yep, we can push stuff out.
I mean, if we want them to use the electronics, and if we want them to get used to using that, I have a work calendar that's the first thing I open up every single day.
Right.
What is my meeting schedule? You know, what's due?
I'm just thinking, I don't know about your household, but I can't imagine having an 8th grader that you want to open up a Chromebook as soon as they get out of bed, before they have to hit their bus out in Queens Hollow at 6:45 in order to get to school on time, and keep on track what they're looking at to be relevant for that day.
I agree. I think that's why it needs to be fixed days, because I can't get my kids to open their stuff up, and they'll be lucky if they can have it ready to go with them, much less open it up and look at it as we're chasing them out the door.
Maybe.
I mean, they struggle with this when they go to school 5 days a week.
I know.
I mean, they constantly look up on the website and say, what day is it today?
We put
Now,
a big
like-
cardboard A and B in the front window of the office so that we.
Yeah, but the difference then is they have to be
They have to be
there
there.
every day.
Right.
Now it
They're-
determines whether or not they gotta go.
Right.
We just want them to learn, but I mean, this is it's a life skill, but it's a life skill that is very hard to master. And if they're supposed to be in school and they don't get on the bus, or vice versa, the consequences that's a significant one. They can always be remote if they're supposed to be in school, but as we said, we want them to come to school.
They'll
Let's
have
talk
to
about it.
adapt.
But if everybody's doing A block, B block the same, your family is going to be affected, because you're going to have one of your 3 is going to know. I know that only one of mine will announce it to the rest of them every single time.
I mean, they have to get up either way. It's just
Yeah.
better if they're going to learn from home that day or go to school,
Right.
Shorts
Pants
or
or pajamas.
right?
There's a big difference between catching a bus out in Queens Hollow on your attendance day and sitting in your pajamas for class on the couch.
The only,
Right.
the only other thing is, what happens if we were to actually have a snow day or the COVID snow day? Do we just wipe a B1?
Everything's
Like
should be
what?
set ahead of time. It should be set, it should not.
Well, that's what I
reset.
mean. If you have a snow day on
I
Monday and it's
agree.
A1 day, then you just go to A2. You don't
Yes.
readjust the whole
And
calendar.
that's why I was like, I hope we've looked at this throughout the entire year, so that we know how holidays play a role, and we haven't unintentionally set up a block to have lots of gaps.
Well, that's why
Yeah.
they slide, right? The holidays push everything.
Yeah, the way it is now, it would
Snow
work
day
out, that would
wouldn't.
never happen, but if we go to fixed, we'd have to map it out.
It's a moving target.
But if it
It
always
is a
comes
movie.
up, then it
Dr.
should.
Bill, I have a question about the mask breaks. So I'm correct in the understanding that these mask breaks are happening in the classroom?
That's correct.
Okay, so we do all of these things to stay safe. We wash our hands, we social distance, we keep masks on. Now we're saying it's okay every period to take your mask off?
Before somebody else comes in that classroom? Or
No,
the
you get to take it
teachers
off.
are
So,
leaving?
okay.
Yes, he's saying we have.
So I understand that. Me being a teacher, there is no way I would ever feel comfortable or allow a student to take a mask off. I don't even feel comfortable with the people in this room that don't have their mask on. Okay? So what is going to be the option for the teacher or the student that wants no part of this?
We have some staff already who have talked about possible accommodations for them in a number of scenarios, and one person has self-volunteered and said, I'm just going to stand outside the doorway and be able to see my students while they have their masks off. Or someone saying, I'm going to stand near the open window while that's occurring. So there are some ways to help mitigate that, but you're right, there will be staff.
Is a teacher required to do that? Do they have to give that 4-minute break?
I think if it were impossible for someone to do it, we would have to come up with an alternative for them. The other thing is, some of my suggestions were we talk about the spread of the virus and the things that cause that: aspiration, talking loud, singing, playing sports. I think whatever happens during that 4 minutes needs to be very strategically trained into all the participants. And if they're not doing it, then they don't get to take their mask off. You know what I'm saying? We are practicing safer protocols. It can be a exit ticket. They're silently doing the exit ticket for the teacher of the coursework that they just did. They could be writing a response on their Chromebook. But it could be something that doesn't require any of those activities that we know have the potential to surmount 6 feet. Me sitting here breathing normally.
Because I'm sure all kids will sit there and breathe normally and not touch their face or do anything like that. I just think if this is this important, then the entire building needs to walk outside and walk back in. I would never allow anything like this in my classroom, and I'll fight it. Okay.
I'm with him. I said the same thing at Ava Park when they mentioned mask breaks. I said, not in my room. The new studies are saying that this virus can linger in the air up to 16 feet, not 6 feet. And if we work this hard for so many months, and we're expecting everybody to come in wearing masks 90% of the day, what is the rationale behind saying, okay, take it off for 4 minutes, let's let it all out, and then we'll put them back on? I mean,
Well, and I guess my concern is we're worrying about the surface areas also.
right.
So everyone's taking their masks off at the end of the class. They're warmer, they're sweatier, they're breathing heavy because they're finally free of it. It's all over that desk, and then they're getting up and leaving, and new kids are coming in.
Without any cleaning or anything going on. I mean, that's just...
Yeah, we, as I mentioned, I think the last meeting, we're working on the prototype for a desk cover that students actually is theirs for the day, that they would take with them. But
that they would carry down the halls and everything from class to class.
these are
I
big.
know it's not a
huge
perfect
waste of
science.
money.
It's just
This is your
the more you talk about it, the more you think.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they're saying this is our number one defense against this. I mean, I know it's annoying. It's all my glasses continually fog up. It's driving me crazy being in it. But if this is our number one defense, I don't see any reason to take it off in a classroom with a bunch of kids around. It just
You can take it off in the bathroom and they go in there one by one. You know?
Well, we had our presentation with the staff this morning, and the buildings will have their own meetings with staff next week, and they may fine-tune, what we're discussing now. And we, as a promise to families and to staff, this is something that will continuously evolve. And every single one of us has to compromise in some way. I'm not asking people to compromise their safety in an unreasonable way, but I know that there will be areas where all of us are at least a little bit uncomfortable in what we're being asked to do. And they'll continue to work on it. Listen, we may get to the first day, that first block, second period, first day, the kids take their masks off and they violate every expectation that we have. I'm going to say that by third block, no one's taking their mask off. But we want to make it in a balanced in a way that we don't set a teacher against the students in their class and vice versa. So your suggestion, Pete, is well heard, because if I was able to take my mask off second period or second block, and I go into third block, and you're telling me no way, no how, that's putting an extra stress on a relationship that is a brand new relationship. So we have to come up
But
with
this is my
something.
life, this is my health. You know, I'm sorry that I'm gonna stress you out more, because I'm pretty stressed out. And I think by not wearing a mask, that is a bad decision to make. Especially in a classroom with a tiny window. I mean, the high school classrooms are not amazingly wide open and spread. It's a concrete, small room. Now you have 12 or 15 kids with no mask on. That's
This
a
is
bad
one of those,
idea.
I think, that's gonna be harder to put back in once you let it out too. I think if you come in and saying, mask on all day long, and 2 months in, things seem to be going well, and we say, okay, we're gonna try and work in a mask break, we'll give it a shot, that's a possibility. If we start out with, all right, we have scheduled mask breaks, and then 2 days in, we go, this isn't working, you can't take them off, people are gonna be like, you know, it's crazy. I just think it's gonna be a lot harder to regain control of.
Have we had questions about this on our surveys?
They asked what mask breaks would look like. It was presented last night. It was presented last night in that session, and there was not a lot of discussion about that. We had 600 participants, I think, what were we at? 500. 500 participants in the first one. We had a little over 200 folks last night. So it's not 200 last night. I don't think is a broad enough representation of the 1,100 families. There was not a lot of discussion about the mask breaks. There was not a lot of discussion this morning about it from staff either. But I do trust that they will have more discussion about it when they do their building meetings next week.
I guess, and I don't know if we have any other surveys coming back out or anything. The question of, are parents more concerned about having the mask break or more concerned about not having the mask break?
The parents, I think it's at least 2 to 1 families who want to know that their child has an opportunity to take it off, because they see it as it's not just a physical thing, it's an emotional thing to be behind a mask all day. Both, you know, the irritation and the just, you know, we know this. I mean, as adults, it's tough. As you said, Bray, I see a 2-year-old with a mask on. I'm thinking, what possibly is going on in that child's developmental mind when they see
They're
other
realizing
people
what
with
this world is coming to, and that this is going to be a norm. That's what my kids know. They're not the best at it, but we tell them this is the way it is. These are the rules. So they're going to learn from it. Kids are resilient. You know, I don't agree with, you know, what's going on in their head. No, they're going to realize they're not going to know any better. They're not going to know any different. When it's time to put the mask on, you know, maybe we don't have to do it for 6 months and it's got to come back.
I think they'll adapt more easily than the adults will.
I know, but we sit here and talk about kids not being able to adapt to an A day and a B day, but then we're going to sit here and talk
That's
about...
not adapting, that's not
adapting.
adapting, that's just remembering, that's a totally different skill.
I mean, they'll adapt either way to any of them. I mean, you just got to put the rule in place and they'll follow it.
So I said this last time, I'm going to say it again this week. We spend a ton of time talking about the safety protocols that we need to embrace based on the situation we're in. The educational gaps that we're looking at right now with a 5-hour workday or 5-hour school day, with only having 4 classes on one day and 4 classes on the other day, we've basically cut the school year in half, right? So we're looking at 90 times that you're going to be able to see that particular subject versus seeing math every single day.
No, that's normally what we see.
Right?
That's the same.
No, you see math every day.
No, not in every, I mean, a block schedule, we see kids every other day. Here it's a period schedule,
Yeah.
but it's a half of the amount of time.
It's 45 minutes, and
Right,
now we're going to
norm-
have 50 minutes, but we're only doing math on A1, and then on A2, we're not doing math.
No, they're still doing it, they're just doing it from home.
No,
No,
they're not.
they're not.
They're only doing their
Not
4
on
classes
A2.
on
No.
day A. And,
Aren't they doing classes on the B days at home?
Yes.
yeah, but you're still only
But
doing...
you're still only doing it once.
They're still
You're
getting the
only
same
doing-
amount
doing
of
it
time.
one, not. That's the way it's going to be. Correct. It's only 4.
You're not going to do math for 5 days a week.
correct. You're not doing English.
You're
Yeah, but
only
Friday.
that's because they're in a block schedule now.
Right.
A block schedule, you do it every other day, just
Right,
like I did.
for an extended period of time.
If-
right? But your blocks aren't gonna be as long as double
Well, they're
what
not,
regular class.
right, they're not quite as long because
you-
of the short
right.
day.
if you do
But
the
you still get
math-
the same number of,
you're an hour and
But you're gonna-
20 minutes short per week.
So how do you
on
get,
how much
yeah,
you're
how do you get through an
missing
entire
your-
curriculum to meet a Regents or to meet an AP course if you're only doing it
you don't, you
half the
can't.
time?
Everybody's condensing their curriculums across the state. The state's probably not gonna be able to offer Regents exams unless they modify them because we don't have the same amount of contact time in
So,
any
so as
district.
long as that's what the expectation is, the outcome is going to be that, okay, yeah, we're only gonna get through half of what we want to, and that's what the testing is gonna look like at the end of the year, that's fine, but New York State doesn't roll with that, right? New York State rolls out Common Core with no structure in it, and then we take it and bomb, right? So what are the expectations right now to try to get through a curriculum that we really don't know what the end goal is?
So I can just speak to what we're doing now and what we've started to do in March. To Bray's point, we've condensed curriculum to make sure they're hitting what's called priority standards. So those standards that are going to be are bigger and have effects on other standards. We don't know what New York's going to roll out, so we have to teach to those standards, knowing that at some point they may be tested on them. We have our internal assessments that we'll utilize as well for courses like UHS and AP. There are requirements that we have to follow, so I've been in contact with them regarding upgrading syllabi, excuse me, the plural, making sure that even seat time, which may look like this, students will still have to do some asynchronous is a big word, but really it's homework. They're gonna have to do things outside of the classroom to make up for that time. One of the things that isn't on here that, and I know Ms. Shackleton's on this reopening committee as well, so feel free to jump in. But one of the things that's not on here is that there's discussions around time at the end of the day that would be virtual for all teachers, like a virtual 10th period. So if we look at students going home according to that schedule, students going home, teachers getting their time for prep or lunch, whatever they need, coming back together in a virtual way at the end of the day to make sure that they're hitting some of those gaps as well. One of the things, I mean, we're not doing Wednesdays, but one of the things regarding Wednesdays was the idea of possibly doing that, making sure that we differentiate for students. The staff and the committee really felt that we would be able to do that at the end of the day in a kind of a virtual 10th period as well. One of the reasons why they are not thinking about getting rid of a study hall, and they will look through schedules to make sure that kids don't have multiple study halls, because I know that's an angst for many of us. But that for those students, especially in the AP, UHS, higher level types of courses, they're going to need that time to make sure that they're getting to those courses that they need to get to.
That was my follow-up question. We've cut the school day down to 5 hours. How much homework are they going to end up with now because of trying to get through that curriculum, right? Because now we're saying we didn't want to overwhelm them. Last time we had 6, 7, 8 periods with 6, 7, 8 teachers asking for a bunch of stuff. You know, and some kids were working 10 hours a day at home because it was a tremendous amount of work. How do we prevent that same thing here? Because now we've gone to this block schedule, but the expectations are still fairly high. So now they're still, you know, on their computers, sitting there until 4 o'clock in the evening, you know, every day. So obviously we need to give them, you know, mental breaks as well. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
you know, the social and emotional part will be off the charts.
And regular feedback is going to be crucial for this as well. One of the things that came out from parents around a pro for this type of schedule is that students will be able to focus on, instead of 9 subjects within one day, really be able to focus on 4 to 5. So that was one thing that did come out.
Fred, since it's an A and B day schedule, if a student were to be sick, just regularly sick, or miss a day or have an appointment, because those still will occur, will those sessions be recorded? Will they be able to watch what goes on because if you're only having one in-person potentially session with the teacher a week, it's going to be very important for those students who need that, right, to help carry them through the virtual stuff, that there's an opportunity. Because I think one of the things I had heard through the March time period was just missing that connection with seeing a lesson in front of you, and how that equates to the work that you're assigned to do afterwards. Are we doing that? Are we going to record the lessons that happen and make them available so students can either refer to them, use it as refresher, whatever, so because we are in a virtual world and we are asking them to do things on their own?
We're in a virtual world, and what we expect is for our staff to be synchronous in their delivery of instruction, meaning that if I'm teaching right now, my students at home can see me teaching right now. Similar to the way it would be if a child were absent on a Monday, they would come back the following class and they would receive the notes from the teacher or from another student of what was missed, but ideally the teacher. The teacher would be available for that 10th period as Fred has described. So if they need to make up some work, they can touch base with the teacher in that floating period in the afternoon on Tuesday to touch base and get the instruction that they missed. But at this juncture, it's not a logistical issue as much as it is a privacy issue. We believe to be somewhat of a privacy issue, to ask our teachers to record every one of their lessons and inventory them. We're not going to be asking them to record this time unless they so choose, and we will have staff that want to do that work. But it has the potential to become a negotiating point, and I think some people are concerned about privacy in that. Not as concerned as they are about live streaming.
Yeah, I just think it may come up as a question if someone is struggling. I think, again, what I experienced even within my own household was being able to take that assignment, and if we didn't have the lesson in front of it, asking the right questions of the teacher when you had a chance or an opportunity or a session, to get that information necessary to comprehend what is necessary to complete the assignment. So that's.
We are having those conversations, what that could look like, if a teacher is sick too, on the other side.
Right.
What does that look like?
Right.
Can we have, what does virtual sub-plans look like, and what, so we are having those conversations.
Okay.
Ms. Shackleton, is there anything I missed on that? I don't.
But I was just thinking about what Bill was saying. In pre-COVID, if your kid was sick and was home, they wouldn't have those opportunities to ask the question either. So when I'm thinking about reopening, I'm trying to draw as many parallels as I can to the old world as to what we're doing now. I mean, sometimes you just can't, but in the old world, your kid wouldn't be in class, right? So what
Correct,
would they do?
but you would
They
have
go
that
to
next
10th
day.
period. They would go to 10th period, right? A lot of times, and kind of do a catch up with the teacher.
Yep.
Which is what my kid would do. And so we're trying to do these virtual 10th periods so that, if the kid has an immediate need to catch up with a lesson or go over a lesson that they didn't understand that day, that's what the virtual 10th periods would be for. And I don't know, what the scheduling is, but I thought that they would be almost every day of the week, right?
Yes.
Maybe not Fridays, but Monday through Thursday, so there'd be more than one opportunity for a student to go in and get the help.
Are the virtual 10th periods one-on-one, or is it one-on-many? Is it open where 10 students could attend?
Open and optional, right?
I think it would follow a similar 10th period, which would be open to whoever wanted to come. Almost like virtual
Parallel to what
offsite.
we had before COVID. A teacher would be in their classroom. If no kids came, they would be doing their scheduling or whatever.
I'm not in disagreement. I'm just saying in the block schedule in this, you're covering more material. It's not, I think to Jason's point, if you have daily contact, you're out one day or one period, it's less content, it's less that you missed. So don't disagree with you.
But it's more teachers, more classes. If you miss one day and that, you know what I mean? Because you miss 9 as opposed to 4.
It is, unless you've had let's just say you have an orthodontist appointment and you've looped it
One
around
class,
lunch
right.
and you're missing just a math class or whatever. So there are logistics with all of this. It's just, it sounds like you guys are thinking about all that. That's great. And I think that those kinds of questions will come up.
Orthodontist appointment can only be scheduled on the remote day, and you have to have the class in your hand while
We
you're
now
getting
know
your
to
work
do
done.
everything after 1:30.
Well, yes. It opens a bigger window for those appointments, which are very difficult to get.
Those, but it's just, I just want to make sure that we're thinking about these things because they're newer kinds of challenges.
I worked in the district before I came here that used block scheduling, and they were 80-minute blocks, and that was an ongoing conversation a child misses the class on a Monday, they're not coming back until Wednesday, and they've missed 80 minutes of content. How do we resolve that? And in that district, every other day there was an advisory period that was 80 minutes long. So kids could go to a number of teachers within the day in order to fix that. So the 10th period is the resolution for us, and it will be as kids choose to avail themselves of it. That's how we want it to roll. There's just two things left. One was just what remote instruction would look like at the elementary and middle and high school, and then the last thing was start dates for school, which I feel badly. People who watched last night had to wait until minute 1 hour 31 to
It
see
ended
the.
abruptly, I'll just let you know. I was watching and all of a sudden it was gone. I was like, oh, I guess it's over.
No, Fred wished somebody happy birthday. That was it. That was good. Wasn't that the end?
I don't know. I must have missed it. So I was sitting at the kitchen table, and all of a sudden it was just gone. I was like, huh. Did I
We
just
went
miss
to
that?
33 last night. 8:33.
I thought it was 8:45, no?
That was this morning. We went to 45.
No, it's 8:33.
All the forums are.
Yeah, 8:30.
Was that last night? Because it's just,
Yeah, at
just-
8:27, Fred's like, how are we gonna land this plane? Because we got a lot of content to go. So what I did is I did some housekeeping, and then we finished up with some questions, and I said, here's what's left. And it was like a 1-minute summary. So if you missed the 1-minute summary, you're right. It
Every
was
once in a
erupted.
while, my thing freezes anyways.
Tune in tomorrow for part 14, 3.5.
Dr. Bailey, I had a quick question about the remote instruction. Will kids be grouped by like A.W. Becker, like first graders that are choosing remote? Will they be grouped together?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
And this is going to be, which I am hugely in favor of. Kids need to have the same experience no matter where they're sitting in the district, whether they're sitting next door to another teacher of the same grade level, or whether they're across the district. Our teachers need to be symbiotic, because in this model, unlike the secondary one where I'm a chemistry teacher, I'm teaching chem to the same kids, this may be a different teacher teaching second grade. The person who's teaching this, and I quizzed Fred on this morning because we presented it last night and this morning, those teachers need to be working together on their team time, and they need to be in the same area at the same time. Especially if a child chooses to come back, they need to have had the same experience. So it may be a different teacher. We expect that it probably will be someone who's assigned specifically to this remote. It could be a teacher who, is in the staff meeting this morning, like, how are you going to choose? It could be a teacher who, for some reason, mitigating medical circumstance, can't work at work, or work with students live in the classroom, so they might be the ones who do this. It could be someone who we select and we say, all right, we've got 8 teachers assigned to this. We know we only need 7. One person's going to be designated remote. And the third option is if all else fails and we don't have the staff to allocate to this for some reason, and we put this in our operational thing that we sent out for the framework, BOCES is another viable partner. Not only will BOCES allow us to, just like we do with CTE, buy a slot for a student in any grade level, they'll also allow us to use our staff to help BOCES. So BOCES has a need for a 4th grade teacher. We may teach our own kids and students from other districts 4th grade through BOCES. That's the last stop on this train, but it is a possibility, and we have to be so fluid depending on where we are with student enrollment, where we are with the governor's directives, and where we are with staff wellness, or staff ability to do the work live and in person. Fred knows more about the schedule, but I just wanted to say, there may be 3 different ways that we might deliver this to hit these marks.
And I would just say that I think the original thought is to try to keep students together, knowing that we may not be able to, just because if we end up going back in person, miracle, to be able to keep that sense of community.
Right.
Some of our students already have created relationships with the social worker, the counselor from that school, so to be able to have some of those connections still viable for those kids. But to know, based on capacity, that we may have some blended classrooms which is not necessarily a bad idea either.
So one of the reasons why I do ask this question is I do know a few group families that are deciding to do remote learning, but are going to put their children together, which I think is a great idea. Is there any accommodation to help that parent that is working with 3 first graders to have the same teacher?
I think if they let us know, if the families let us know, and I actually, for the first time today, also talked to a parent who was considering that as well.
Okay.
So let us think about that a little bit more, because
Maybe
that really
mention
hasn't.
that tomorrow, or just,
Sure.
because I think there's people that are thinking of it, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes it harder for you, but I know it would help the kids, it would help one parent that's working with 4 kids.
Absolutely.
All doing the same thing rather than, thank you.
That gap, like that 9:30 to 11 time, is that going to be something where the teacher's available, that
Yes.
if people have questions about the assignment that they got from 9 to 9:30, that
Correct.
they can Zoom in, Google in, whatever?
We
So-
expect they'll be connecting with the kids during that time.
Yes, so that not only will be time where they can check in with the teacher, but vice versa. So the teacher will be checking in and individualizing instruction for students as well. So just like for those of you who remember kind of a reading block where the teacher does the lesson and then meets in small groups at their kidney table, it's almost like that virtually. So students will have to be asked to do things, but then the teacher may say, you know, when my timer goes off. And we're actually looking, Google Meet is, we think has a kind of a breakout session type of, almost like, I think Zoom has that as well. A breakout session where you can do small groups and then pull them back together to do that type of work as well. Good question.
Okay.
So this is really, again, thinking about our K-5, so 5 would be included with this as well, possibly 6, but definitely K-5, thinking about not having our youngest learners sitting on a screen for 5 hours. Our older students, we feel, have the capability to be able to do synchronous, so to be able to go on the screen and check in with the teacher. We do have the requirement to take attendance, so we have to be able to make sure that we're connecting with students. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean Mr. Ross here, Mr. McFerrin here. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that. It could also mean that you filled out that Google form as the student, and that counts. That engagement counts as an attendance. But we have to, per New York State, keep attendance during this time as well.
Does the remote day mimic the in-person day for the most part?
It should. For elementary or for secondary?
Yeah, just for elementary. So no, just from a consistency basis, are they?
They'll have their ELA. So if we go back to that, they'll have their ELA block, they'll have
Yeah.
their math block, they'll have their special.
So it's just happening in a remote.
Yeah, it may look
session.
like ELA
And-
might be in the afternoon versus the morning.
Right,
but-
and you know, and the work on your own kind of stuff
Yes.
is just so that the down screen time and they can.
And one of the things we didn't really touch on was supplies and making sure that students have supplies. And they have their own supplies and they're not passing out supplies. But I do know that we're talking about making sure that students who are remote, if there are manipulatives or hands-on, making sure they have them as well. So if
Is
there's
that like
hand-
cardboard, like if they need construction paper, if they need things like that?
Construction paper, flashcards, things that would be more of a center type
Right.
of activity, making sure that they had those available at home as well.
Yeah, 'cause I'm thinking for specials, you might need that.
Right. Music is already talking about, like, if they can get some sort of little drum thing that's theirs, you know,
So
art, making sure they have their
Would we
own.
set up a day like to pick that stuff up, or if you're remote, you're not necessarily coming into school?
Yeah, we haven't talked about the materials yet because CCSs and teachers are still talking about what
Yeah.
those materials would look like. But we did talk about technology, as Dr. Bailey mentioned, and having at least our 5th through 12th graders pick up their technology before the first day of school. Pre-K through 4th grade, we feel that teachers will want to explicitly teach them how to use some of the technology, so not skidding them out to our in-person learners first, but we will give those to our remote learners so that they can start on day 1.
So we talked about synchronous instruction at the secondary level. So a teacher, you have an A and a B group in cohorts that during the A days, the A group would be in person and the teacher would be streaming the class to the B group who was at home. And then as the week progressed, the next time they met, it would be a new lesson based on the one that they had just taught. So it's just students switching in-person versus virtual each time. Again, the attendance requirement here, and again, we expect that we'll be able to do some breakout and do virtual groups, especially in a 55-minute period. Any of you who have ever taught, whether it was in a public school or a Sunday school or worked with any more than 2 kids, you need the ability to be able to allow them to group and challenge themselves, teach each other, and do this work. It's the bread and butter of our profession. And as we mentioned, the closure and an exit ticket is probably a sensible conclusion to the day.
So,
It's a lot. Go
so
ahead.
sorry. So this would be remote learning would look very much like what the students are doing on those B days, on those live streaming type of days. Just remote learners would be doing that throughout the week, the entire week. There would be no in-person component.
Yeah,
for
someone
those
who's
learners.
fully remote.
Right.
So we wouldn't have specialized teachers doing this work. It would be the actual teachers in the classroom.
What if it's like a hands-on activity? I picture myself being an engineering teacher, demonstrating to my 12 students, over a projector over my head what we're building that day. So for that 20 minutes, the kids that are sitting at home are, because we can't ask teachers to be doing 2 things at once, or I don't think it's fair to ask a teacher to teach in their class and then also have to turn around and then teach to kids that are on remote.
So two things just to talk to that, and it's not perfect. So I know Miss Branley, who's really thinking about labs and what does science labs look like. Her department's looking into what could they do virtually. Thinking about even in college, you have your own science kit. To what I was mentioning before, you have your own type of hands-on materials of what that looks like, and it may have to be the teacher does the demonstration, they model it, and then they're asking you to do some sort of response with an activity. So I just did the hands-on, now get out your kit, or go on virtually and mimic the same thing.
That's good. I don't want any labs in my house.
Send the Bunsen burners home.
I just found out that my son's microbiology class has take-home slides that have to be in the refrigerator.
Oh,
Have what? Have what?
In the
His
fridge.
microbiology lab,
Little
they're
Ebola?
only going to meet in person every 3rd lesson, and so the other 2 are at home, including slides that have to be
with
refrigerated.
specimens. Nice.
Smallpox and Ebola. in your fridge.
Can't wait.
And most
Honey,
college
what's for
students are
lunch?
growing science experiments in their fridge, so that's perfect.
Right.
Bedroom, doesn't matter. It's being grown somewhere.
Special education, as with all the other special education, we expect to be engaged in learning 5 days a week, and it'll be a combination of things. Although it says recorded lessons in here, that it really will be a teacher's prerogative, and we want to encourage students to work in small groups. This is a real, very tough bone of contention for some of our families of students who receive services. The state has offered areas of concession, knowing that perhaps not all services will be able to be delivered in the format in which they're accustomed. And considering how hard some services are for families, they may work for years to determine what the need is of a child and then work longer to make sure the right service is provided. To be deprived of it in any way is emotional. It's a very traumatic thing. When Ann spoke last night and Colleen spoke last week as part of the forums with families, they very clearly stated, we will do everything in our power to deliver every single service as promised. We may not be able to do so, but will do everything in our power to meet the needs of our kids. And we recognize that it is in our own best interest to do so. We want the kids to be successful. It isn't just about meeting a mandate. It is about having the kids have all the tools that they need to do the work that they need. No, you've already asked them. Okay, so schedule.
I just want to give kudos to teachers, to you here, because I feel like as we ask questions, embedded in those questions are solutions that we sometimes don't think about, or we have to think about in a different way. And I feel like even the special ed conversation, teachers were saying, have you thought about this for resource? Have you thought about this? And it just really brings like an energy, a synergy to the conversation. So that's all. All right, I'm done.
So you, the Board of Education, will actually, at our next meeting, be asked to help us. We want to adjust the approved board calendar. We would like to have as much time as possible to prepare for the task that's been set in front of us. We want our staff to be trained and skilled and confident into the format of the work that we're being expected to do. To do that, right now we have scheduled September 3rd, Professional Development Day, Superintendent's Conference Day, and then staff were expected to come back the day after Labor Day for an additional conference day, and then students were supposed to hit the ground running on Wednesday the 8th, I believe. 9th, Wednesday the 9th.
In-person days for the 8th and 9th graders and 5th and 6th, well, I'll go with 8th and 9th because there's an A-B connotation. Does that start the A-B thing, or is that just kind of orientation, and then if you're an A student, you're coming 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th off 18th, or, you know what I mean?
You're already into the complexity of it. I'll talk through all of it, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about 8th, 9th. So here's what we'd like to do. We would like to have that week after Labor Day to be good at what we're doing. There are a lot of schools in the Capital Region BOCES who are doing the same thing. We intend to do so by doing two unique things. One is to move our professional development days that we have during the year. We have 3. We want to move them to the beginning of school. All of them to the beginning of school. And the other thing that we are interested in doing is actually utilizing one of our days before Memorial Day. We want to use it now. As a reminder, if we have one remaining emergency day, the weekend of Memorial Day weekend, we have that Friday off traditionally. So it's not like we're giving up all the days, and it's not like we won't have the day before Memorial Day off. We're saying we're going to hedge our bet, and we would like to use it that Friday before the 14th, whatever date that is, the 11th, right? So we'll have 5 days of professional development before students start. And then once we do begin on Monday, we want a welcome start because we've got students coming into buildings for the very first time under the most unusual circumstances we've ever seen. It is only fair to give them a chance to come into their buildings and do this work. If we tried to do it in the week before this, the week of Labor Day holiday, those teachers would not be able to professionally develop. They would spend 2 days strictly with those students, and they'd be deprived of the experiences the other staff are going to be learning. So we want Monday and Tuesday, the 14th and 15th, for our K1, 5, 6, and 8, 9 kids to come into school without anybody else there. Every other grade is going to have to be remote during those days.
Even the elementary?
Yes,
That's the only time they'll be remote?
that's the only time. I know, Fred just said that. It's a trick question. It may force us to bring elementary in right from the beginning. It may force us to move K1 back a week because I don't know that second graders are ready to do that work. So it may be with some alteration just for the younger grades. We've always done a welcome start a little bit before school for like K and UPK. So that's the only concession. But 5th, 6th will be able to do that. And to Bill's question about 8, 9 starting the rotation, I'll tell you tomorrow.
Okay.
It very well, we don't want it to, because if it's AABB, if we do AA, then only half the kids will be there.
Right.
Well, are those days like the 14th going to be an A day, the 15th a B day,
As
or are all
orientation.
9th graders coming in those 2 days? And all
We could start that way. But listen, based on what you've said, whether we're rotating or we're fixed or whatever, everybody's going to have a calendar for what the first month looked like so they can wake up in the morning and look at a calendar on the refrigerator instead of opening their Chromebook. We've agreed
I was
an 8th
just
grader won't do it.
So I was just thinking logistically, if you have AABB,
Yes.
if you're starting off remote, you potentially have the first week for one of the cohorts
Yes.
be pretty much all remote.
You're like
Well, no, that
calculus
Monday-
with this
what
stuff.
they'll do-
You-
That Monday be an A, Tuesday a B.
You can
and then
see-
No,
the 2
because
A's
that's
and
not
then-
that's not the way that it goes. AABB.
Well, maybe we'll just do 1 and 1 to start.
No, you can't break the chain.
We can break it. The first week we're gonna do A, B, and then go to
Changes
AA.
everything.
Everybody's a C.
We're all calling you to find out what day it is when this comes down. Or have your
This is
oldest
all
child
like,
do it.
this is all coding.
All right, that was it, and the rest of it is just timeline. So we'll continue to adjust where we start school, but the intention is to get as much professional development at the beginning as possible.
All right.
So we got the 2 panels tomorrow, and then commitment letters on Friday from families.
I know that this was asked.
Yours is included.
And any questions?
Yeah, I know that this was asked during live stuff. Oh, come on, Bright. Just one question.
4 hours and Joanne still hasn't talked yet.
Will there be school supply lists going out?
Yes.
What day? Because I know that, some families plan on this during certain times and they don't want to be all caught on September 5th or
Yeah.
September 8th, all going to try to figure out their school supplies.
On the day that Staples runs out.
Whatever it is. I'm just,
We're also trying to purchase a lot of the supplies.
Understood.
ourselves.
Mouse pad,
But-
keyboard, you're good.
Part of what we're doing, so that's
Computer.
probably has to do with the delay.
Headphones.
all right, thermometers.
Okay. Mrs. Moran.
Nothing.
Fred, you don't have anything?
No, he said we didn't try and
added
use
my
this
2
time up.
cents.
He's good.
They used all their time? I've got a couple of things. I wanted to talk about we talked a lot during the budget season about a possible revenue loss, a reduction based on the state of the budget for the New York State. And we realized just in the last couple of days that has now come to fruition. Part of we have a payment that's due in the summer for excess cost aid, and that was reduced by 20%. We built a budget thinking that the 20% reduction would be based on foundation aid. And it seems like it might be across the board. In one of the meetings I was in this afternoon with the school business officials, the question came up and no one really knew. And what we had already identified in one of the grants that we request money from, and all of our grants we request payments during the year. Well, this final payment for one of our UPK grants was reduced by 20%. So it seems as though the reduction is going to be across the board. Now, we don't know if any of it's going to be reinstated or given back. Those were questions that were asked. I was able to share with my colleagues that, yep, it's because we had already realized what it was, and everybody's just finding that out now. If it is truly a reduction in our aid amount across the board, where we anticipated about 2.4 million a shortage, it'll be up to 3.6. It's $1.2 million less in revenue. But I know that the state built their budget on 3 look-back periods. The next one, the third one, is due at the end of December, so we'll see how that impacts us. We haven't been approved for our pre-K money yet either for the 2021 school year. We don't know if that will be reduced by 20% or not. That would be about $35,000. I'll break out when I know a little bit more. I know one of the general aid payments where the state gives us a reconciliation sheet. They haven't even issued it yet. As soon as I have that, we're hoping in the next couple of weeks, I'll update exactly where we are numbers-wise right now today, in September. I should be able to update us on that. Another thing that has caught us a little bit off guard is our unemployment amount. Got to give credit to Sue Starr. She's a dog with a bone. She had our payment to 0 since I've been here. We didn't owe any money because we, really watch that like a hawk. I shouldn't say we, Sue does. Well, right now our payment, our quarterly payment right now is about $30,000. Maybe it's up from 50. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to be coming back to you with a resolution to increase our unemployment reserve by approximately $300,000 in September. We've already run it by our auditor. It's one thing, we have the money, we might as well put it away. And we can use that to offset the expenses in the next year as we build a budget.
Why do we have so much unemployment liability? We haven't laid anybody off, have we?
No, but everybody has applied for unemployment due to a reduction in hours. Some of them just because everybody has. Anybody that didn't have any hours over the summer or reduced hours for transportation was eligible for unemployment. It has gone through the roof. Many people applied for if somebody wasn't making $511 every 2 weeks, they were eligible for it when we gave them their regular pay. So a lot of people that were working also got to apply for it.
So people that we kept on the payroll and paid all along, were still able to apply for unemployment?
Yes.
So we should have thrown them off the payroll to begin with, I guess, huh? That was our whole point with paying everybody right through, was that we wouldn't be putting them out there out of a job on unemployment.
But if you were to take, I'm not defending it because I'm just as frustrated, we've been very frustrated, but if you take somebody who is in the transportation area, they lost their ability for those extra hours that got them their regular pay. So their pay, while it was steady as what their base pay would be based on their bid run, they may not have been eligible for an extra run opportunity, so their earnings actually did diminish, they did go down. And it wasn't just transportation, so let me be clear about that, it was across the board.
Did we have other opportunities to do tasks in the district?
For a lot of people we did, Tina. Some people we didn't.
So what direction should we take, like if this was to happen again and we're out of school? I mean, do we just lay people off and right from the start, or do we continue to pay them
I think
while they're out? I mean, what direction? And is this going to happen again next summer?
I think that given where we are right now and what we know as far as some of the challenges that we'll be facing in the future budget years and this year itself, that's going to be a serious conversation that we have. Let's be honest, if we're in a position where we do lay people off, we're going to incur an unemployment expense. So that goes with or without it. So these will be conversations when we have a true, really good number for what we're going to be short on what we do. If we are presented with a closure across the board, then we'll have to have those conversations again.
Okay.
I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
Our external audit with Marvin starts on Tuesday. They anticipating being here 3 days next week right now, which is still a nice thing. It might be 4. We have a separate room for them set up in the business office. They will come on site. We're going to keep them separate from all of us. And the other thing I'm going to make everybody aware of, it's on a sad note, is we've had quite a lengthy history with Coxsackie Transport over the years, and Mr. Parks passed away last week. So I wanted everybody to know that that they're still committed to providing as many runs as they can. They are committed to staying in business, but again, that was quite a shock, and I wanted to share that with the Board of Education. That's it.
Okay. New business. Anybody have any items? Old business. A few things I want to bring up for facility maintenance that, since the new architects are coming, and I'll go quick, is our high school vents around the outside here. It's only been a thorn in my side for a couple of years, those ugly looking vents that we have that still aren't painted. You know what ones I'm talking about? That are next to the drive-in. The louvers. That all look rusted when we redid the EFS and then the vents. That's kind of when I pulled in the other day to look at our new steps.
Yes.
Those still stick out.
Yeah, I won't tell you what the stalemate was, but
one
yes.
of the things, and just get answers. One of the other things is what our plan is. I think we've discussed this not too long ago, but what an updated plan is for our fields at Peter B. I think it's the only brown grass in the community after we got that tropical storm and 5 inches of rain. All the grass except for where the sod is green. Everything where the sod is, like it's gone. Like it's brown, it's dead. There's ruts in there, weeds. Yeah. So I don't know if we have an answer. We still have to.
One of the things that Mr. Schramm and I are working on is the irrigation. We talked about that, I think, a couple of weeks ago. We are going to be drilling a well. We have permission. We had to double check a few things. Albany County will allow us to have a well on our property and a tank system like we do similar to the high school. We have to put irrigation in that.
I guess putting irrigation or putting water there, where are we at, like, with, I guess, the architect and the sod and liability? Because we don't have any water on the rest of the grass around Peter B, and that's perfectly green and fine.
Yep.
It turns brown where you get to where they put the sod.
And it wouldn't.
Get rid of the water. Now there's not enough water to keep anything alive.
What was that?
We spent a fortune to get rid of the water in those fields.
Oh, I know.
And now there's not enough water to keep
Are we
it.
gonna
But
have
I
to
will tell
reseed
you,
this?
no, we have, that, up until recently, that field looked wonderful. And it was that last stint, 2 weeks of that dry period, but we have a regular maintenance plan for it. We're working on overseeing, the guy has been in. So our problem right now is now water on Peter
Well,
Peter.
This I don't understand, because the sod is sod for a period of time, and then it's grass, right?
Yeah.
So if all the other natural grass is perfectly fine,
Why
why
does the
is
sod die?
this?
I don't know.
It
will-
should
Because
still be
they-
under
Yep, it's
special
been-
circumstances.
Because that's
But-
the area that we dug up and took everything out and took all the
There's,
water.
there's
But-
something that's wrong underneath or something that the grass isn't growing.
One of the things, if you'd noticed, again, I don't think I would ever put sod in anywhere, that's just me. But if you were to pay attention a few months ago with the high school field, we were out there, we had the sod people out, and because if you had looked down and you stood the long ways down that field, there were brown strips going down where every single one of the drain lines was. And what we had to do for that is we had to alter the irrigation schedule, and not necessarily the schedule, but the amount of water that was released during each period of watering, which corrected that. So again, we do believe it's strictly water right now, but I will get some more information for you for the next board meeting.
It's kind of just discouraging and disappointing.
The one thing you said, the water, you said there's ruts also?
I think it's because there's weeds, and then when they pull the weeds out, it's leaving like holes or little divots into the fields. So it's kind of like it's a trip hazard almost when you're out there walking.
I'll give you an update on September 2nd.
Right. We talked about putting a fence up down there, just because of, fence around the fields because of the nature. The other thought was the 100, flock of geese here that we have down in this field. I know we've talked about that one before, and I don't know if it's putting a fence around the water there that would keep some of them away, or maybe we just drive down there with a gator all day long. But there's a lot of them. I've never seen this many on that field down there.
Geese at Peter B?
Nope, he's here at the high school.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of animals at Peter B. There's, rabbit, deer, geese. You can get your whole collection
Rabbit,
of, things. And my last thing is, and this is probably something for the architect and everything, is that entire blacktop area at Becker, which I think we've talked about before. It just, we got to do some kind of rehab or refurbishing. It's old.
The playground?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the blacktop and the.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's one basketball net broke at Peter B that needs to be straightened up. But that's all I have. Anybody else?
On a positive, of all the work that was done at AW Becker.
Did look really good.
Looks fantastic.
I agree. That's actually what made me think of the other things.
Yeah.
So.
Peter B could use some of the similar enhancements that AW Becker got. So it looks really good.
Okay. Finance Audit Committee meetings attached. We talked about that last meeting. No hearings and petitions. Next upcoming meeting is September 2nd, and we have no need for executive session. I know who's waiting, but motion to adjourn. Mr. McFerrin, Mrs. Klein, all in favor? Aye.